This is the story of something really creepy that happened to me, and I swear on everything, it's true. I don't know if it was a ghost, a stalker, or something even worse, but it happened at a Walmart. And ever since that night, I haven't looked at that store the same way again. So sit tight. I'm going to tell you what happened. Just don't go shopping late at night alone after this, okay? It was a cold Thursday night. I remember because it was just after a small snowstorm. Everything was quiet, frozen. I had just gotten off work and realized I needed a few things: snacks, dish soap, and some batteries. Nothing major. Walmart was still open, and it was past 11 p.m. The roads were pretty empty, so I figured I'd be in and out quickly. When I pulled into the parking lot, it was almost deserted. Just a few cars scattered here and there. The building looked so normal, brightly lit as always with that familiar blue sign. But there was something off. I felt it the second I stepped out of my car. The air was still, too still. No wind, no sound, like the world was holding its breath. I shrugged it off and went inside. Only 2 cashiers were working. One of them gave me a strange look, like she wanted to say something but didn't. The greeter wasn't there. You know how there's usually someone standing by the door? That night, the space was empty. Still, I didn't think much about it. I grabbed a cart and headed down the first aisle. The lights above flickered once, just a quick zap of darkness, then came back. Again, I brushed it off. But that uneasy feeling started to grow. As I moved through the store, I noticed something else. I couldn't hear anything. No music, no announcements, no other shoppers. Just the sound of my cart's wheels, squeaking. I passed a few aisles and noticed they were completely empty. Not just of people, of products. Shelves cleared, like someone had come through and taken everything off, but only some aisles. Others looked fully stocked, untouched. It made no sense. Then, as I turned into the electronics section to look for batteries, I saw someone, or something. At the far end of the aisle, a tall man stood completely still facing the shelves. He didn't move, didn't even twitch. He had this weird posture, too stiff, like a mannequin. He was wearing dark clothes, and a hood covered most of his head. "Hey man, you good?" I called out, trying to keep it light. He didn't answer. He didn't even flinch. Okay, creepy, I thought. Maybe he's just a weird dude. But something deep in my gut told me to turn around and leave that aisle. I did. I backed out slowly, keeping my eyes on him until I was out of sight. I turned down the next aisle over and walked fast, trying to shake off the chill crawling up my spine. That's when I heard footsteps, not mine. Heavy, dragging footsteps behind me. I stopped. The sound stopped too. I turned. No one. I picked up the pace, heading for the front of the store. Enough was enough. I had maybe 5 things in my cart, and I didn't even care about them anymore. I just wanted out. But as I neared the front, the automatic doors weren't working. They stayed closed, and the 2 cashiers gone. I looked around, panicked. "Hello?" I shouted. My voice echoed. Nothing. No one. Then I heard a soft noise from behind, like something being dragged across the floor. Slow. Scraping. I turned slowly, and I swear to you, I saw that same tall figure again. This time, he was halfway down the frozen foods aisle, just standing there, watching me. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his stare. I bolted. I didn't care if the doors were locked or not. I slammed into them full force. They didn't budge. I hit them again and again. Nothing. It was like they were sealed shut. And then, This still makes my skin crawl. I heard him laugh. Not loud, not crazy, just a low, dry chuckle that floated through the air like smoke. I turned around, heart pounding. He was gone. I didn't even hear him move. But I knew he was still in the store, somewhere. I started running through the aisles, trying to find a back exit. I ran past clothing racks, toys, home goods. Everything looked wrong. Things were in the wrong places. Some shelves looked burned. Others had red handprints smeared across them. I kept telling myself I was dreaming, that maybe I had fallen asleep in my car outside, but it felt too real. Finally, I saw a sign for the employee exit. I pushed through the swinging door and found myself in the stockroom. Dark, cold, full of shadows. The boxes were stacked too high, too close together. It felt like walking through a maze. I moved fast, whispering, "Please, let there be a door, please." And then, I found one. A red emergency door with a big push bar. I ran to it, slammed my hand down, but it didn't open. The alarm didn't even go off. That's when I felt it. Hot breath on my neck. I froze. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I just stood there, shaking, heart thudding in my chest like it was trying to escape. Then I heard him speak. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was dry, deep, like it came from under the ground. It didn't sound human. It echoed in my bones. I turned around slowly, and there was nothing there. Gone. I don't even remember how I got out. I think I blacked out. The next thing, I knew I was sitting in my car, hands shaking on the wheel, keys already in the ignition. My cart was still in the store. I looked at the building, still brightly lit, still looking normal from the outside. I drove away and never went back. Few days later, I told someone what happened. They said the Walmart had a back room that caught fire years ago. Killed a worker who'd gotten trapped inside. He was tall, always wore a hoodie. People said he still watched over the store. Some believed it, some didn't. But I know what I saw. And every time I pass that Walmart now, I feel cold. So yeah, that's my story. Believe it or not, that's up to you. But next time you're shopping late and you hear footsteps, maybe don't turn around. Just walk faster. Trust me. This is the story of something that happened to my friend Mark and me a few years ago. It's something I'll never forget. It's one of those stories that'll make you look over your shoulder the next time you walk through an empty street at night, wondering if you're being watched. It all started one summer evening. Mark and I had been hanging out at my place, doing the usual, playing video games, joking around, trying to avoid the reality of growing up. We were both in our early 20s, but we still held on to that carefree feeling of being young. That night we decided to grab a few beers and go for a walk to the park nearby. The sun had already set, and the streets were quiet, a little too quiet. We'd been to that park 100 times. It was a small, quiet place with a couple of swings, a bench or two, and a large oak tree at the center. It was nothing special, but it was our spot. It was peaceful there at night, just the sound of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves. But that night, something felt different. We walked to the park, laughing and talking, not paying much attention to the surroundings. As we reached the park, we noticed the streetlights were flickering, as if the power was about to go out. The park, usually bright with light, now had an eerie glow. We joked about it, of course, making light of the situation. Maybe the city's cutting back on electricity, Mark said, cracking open his beer. Yeah, or maybe the ghosts are taking over, I laughed, taking a swig of my drink. We both chuckled at that, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. We sat down on the bench near the oak tree, just talking and drinking. The wind started to pick up, making the leaves rustle louder. That's when I saw her. She was standing across the park, under the streetlight. I noticed her right away because she was completely out of place. She was wearing a long white dress, the kind you'd see in old-fashioned movies, and her hair was long and dark, hanging down over her shoulders. But what made her even stranger was that she was completely still, not moving at all. She just stood there, staring at nothing. I nudged Mark and pointed towards her. Hey, check that out. Mark glanced over and raised an eyebrow. What's with her? Does she not know it's like midnight? I didn't say anything. I just watched. The longer I stared at her, the more uneasy I felt. She didn't seem to be aware of us, or maybe she was, but she wasn't acknowledging it. It was like she was in her own world, disconnected from everything around her. Let's go, man, Mark said, standing up. This place is giving me the creeps. But before we could even get up, something strange happened. The wind suddenly died down, and the streetlights flickered again. This time, they went out entirely, leaving the park in complete darkness. Great, Mark muttered, fumbling for his phone. It's one of those nights. I couldn't argue with that. My phone had no signal out here, and the dark park with a strange woman standing in the middle of it didn't exactly feel safe. But then, in the pitch-black night, I heard her voice. It was soft at first, barely a whisper, but then it grew louder, clear as day. Come closer. Mark and I froze. The voice wasn't coming from the woman standing by the streetlight. It was coming from behind us, from the oak tree. We turned around slowly, but there was nothing there. I grabbed Mark's arm. Did you hear that? He nodded, his face pale. Yeah. What the hell was that? Let's go, I said, my heart racing. I wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. We started walking toward the park entrance, but before we could take more than a few steps, the voice called out again. But this time it was much closer, almost in our ears. Come closer. I won't hurt you. Both of us spun around, but there was still no one there. The woman was gone, but we could feel her presence. We could feel her watching us, like invisible eyes were pressing into the back of our necks. I've never felt that kind of fear before. It wasn't just the creepy voice, it was the wrongness of it all. Like everything about this moment was unnatural, as if the world itself had shifted into something darker. Without saying a word, Mark grabbed my arm, and we ran. We didn't look back. The sound of our feet hitting the gravel echoed through the silent night. But just as we reached the entrance to the park, something caught my eye. There, standing at the far edge of the park, was the woman again. This time, she was much closer, right near the tree where we had been sitting earlier. She wasn't standing still anymore. She was walking toward us, but with a strange, jerky motion, like she couldn't move properly. Her eyes were wide, and her face was pale, her expression twisted with something between sadness and anger. She didn't say anything this time. She just stared at us, her gaze burning through the darkness. Mark and I didn't wait to find out what she wanted. We sprinted out of the park, running down the street toward my house. The whole time, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, like someone was following us. We made it back to my place, breathless and terrified. I locked the door behind us, and we both collapsed on the couch, trying to catch our breath. Neither of us said anything for a few minutes. We just sat there in silence, staring at the door, half expecting the woman to appear at the window or knock on the door. But nothing happened. Eventually, Mark broke the silence. "Do you think we were just imagining things?" I shook my head. "No way. There was something wrong with that woman. I don't know what it was, but I felt it. I'm not going back there." Neither of us went to that park again. We tried to act like nothing happened, but the memory of her stayed with us, haunting us every time we passed that park. There's something about that night that never sat right with me. Maybe it was the way she called to us, or the way she moved. Or maybe it was the fact that we both felt like we were being pulled toward something we didn't understand. I don't know who or what she was, but I'll never forget the way she made me feel. And to this day, if I'm ever walking alone, at night I can't help but glance over my shoulder just to make sure she's not following me. I hope you never have to experience it. But if you do, just remember one thing. Don't follow the voice. This is the story of my friend James and a night he'll never forget. It's the kind of story that makes you wonder if certain places are cursed, if some things are meant to stay buried, or if the world just doesn't make sense anymore. I'm not exaggerating when I say that James is still haunted by this experience. And to be honest, I think it changed him. He never looked at the world the same way after that night. It all started when he decided to buy a new car. James had been talking about getting something a little more exciting than his old sedan. After a lot of research, he settled on a used sports car, a sleek black coupe that looked like it was made for speed. It wasn't brand new, but it was in great condition, and James couldn't wait to take it out for a spin. He found it at a small dealership out in the countryside. The place wasn't exactly a high-end operation. It was just a rundown lot surrounded by trees, with only a couple of cars on display. The salesman, a man named Ray, was a bit strange, but James didn't think much of it. Ray seemed to know his stuff about cars, and the deal was too good to pass up. "All right," James said, shaking Ray's hand. "I'll take it." That's when Ray got serious. His eyes narrowed and he leaned in a little too close. "Just one thing," Ray said, his voice low. "This car has a history. It's not just a car. It's got some memories." James laughed, thinking Ray was just trying to scare him. "What, like ghost stories or something?" Ray didn't smile. "Something like that. Just be careful when you drive it at night. That's all I'll say." James shrugged it off. He'd heard all sorts of weird stories from car salesmen before. People love to tell you strange things to make their cars seem more special. Ray's warning didn't bother him at all. So, James paid, got the keys, and drove off with his new car. The first few days went by without incident. The car ran perfectly. James felt like the king of the road every time he took it out. But then, things started to get weird. It started on a Friday night. James had just finished up a long week at work and decided to take the car out for a late-night drive. He didn't really have anywhere to go. He just wanted to enjoy the open road. So he drove out of town, heading down a dark, winding road that went through the woods. The moon was barely visible behind the clouds, and the trees seemed to press in on either side, creating a tunnel of shadows. James was just getting into the music when he noticed something strange. A figure standing at the edge of the road. It was a woman, standing completely still, just off the shoulder. She was dressed in white, her hair long and flowing like she had just stepped out of a movie. James instinctively slowed down, thinking maybe she needed help. But when he got closer, something felt Wrong. The woman didn't move, didn't even acknowledge the car. She just stood there, staring straight ahead, her face hidden by the shadows. James was about to stop when something stopped him. He noticed the road ahead. It seemed to be getting darker. The headlights couldn't cut through the gloom, and the road seemed to stretch endlessly into the night. He looked back at the woman, but now she was gone. It was like she had vanished into the air. James felt a chill run down his spine. He quickly sped up and got out of there. The feeling of unease didn't leave him, though. It stayed with him, like a shadow clinging to his mind. Over the next few nights, the strange events continued. Every time James drove that car, the same thing happened. He'd see the woman standing at the side of the road. Sometimes she'd be standing in the same spot. Other times, she'd be further along the road, but always in the same white dress. And each time, just as he was about to stop or get a closer look, she'd vanish. The worst part? He started hearing things in the car. Whispers, soft voices, almost like a conversation, but too quiet to make out the words. At first, he thought it was just his imagination. But it kept happening. Every time he was alone in the car, especially at night, the whispers would come. It was always in the back of his mind, like someone was in the seat behind him talking to him. And that's when the dream started. James couldn't sleep without seeing her. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing at the side of the road, waiting for him to stop. The dreams felt so real that he'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, unsure of what was real anymore. The line between the dreams and reality started to blur. One night, after a particularly bad dream, James decided he couldn't take it anymore. He had to know what was going on with the car. Maybe Ray wasn't just telling a creepy story after all. He drove back to the dealership the next morning, hoping to find some answers. But when he pulled into the lot, something was off. Ray's dealership was empty. The lot was abandoned, the cars covered in dust and grime. It looked like no one had been there in years. James was stunned. He walked around the lot, searching for any sign of Ray. But there was nothing. No traces of the business, no clues. Just the empty lot. That's when he noticed it. There, at the far corner of the lot, was the same black coupe he'd bought. The car looked exactly like his, but it was rusted, worn down. It seemed older, like it had been sitting there for decades. He walked up to it, his heart racing. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything was exactly the same, except for the faint, ghostly outline of a woman in the passenger seat. Suddenly, the whispers started, louder this time, so loud that they filled his ears, his mind. He stumbled back, gasping for breath, and then he heard her voice clearly. "You should have never taken the car." The figure in the seat next to him shifted. He could see her now, her face pale and hollow, eyes empty but full of sorrow. "Who are you?" James whispered, his voice shaking. The woman's eyes locked onto his. "I was once like you. I took the car. Now it owns me." James ran. He didn't stop until he was back in his own car, speeding away from the lot, never looking back. That was the last time he ever drove the black coupe. He sold it the next day, at a loss. But he didn't care about the money. He just wanted to be rid of it. And as for Ray, James never saw him again. The dealership was gone, vanished without a trace. To this day, James doesn't drive at night. He never talks about the car, and whenever I ask him about it, he just looks at me with that haunted expression. He won't even tell me exactly what happened after that night, only that he's never been the same. But I know one thing. Some things don't come with a price tag. Some things can't be bought. And when you try, you might just find out that they've already been waiting for you. This is the story of a man named Thomas, and the night he found something that was never meant to be found. I swear, every time he tells this story, I get chills. And the worst part? It's all true. He never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural until that one night. Thomas had always been a practical guy. He was the kind of person who needed hard evidence before he'd believe in anything strange. So, when his friends started telling him about a supposedly haunted house at the edge of town, he just laughed it off. They said it was the kind of place you didn't go near, especially after dark. There were stories, strange noises, flickering lights, and sightings of things that weren't there. But to Thomas, these were just stories, nothing more. It was a weekend in late autumn when he decided to check it out. He had some free time and he thought, why not? I'll go and see what the fuss is about. His friends were all urging him not to go, but of course, that only made him more determined. They told him not to go alone, but Thomas, being Thomas, didn't listen. The house was on the outskirts of town, nestled in a small valley, surrounded by trees that were already bare of their leaves. The place had a reputation, but it wasn't hard to find. From the moment he turned down the dirt road, Thomas could feel the air change. It wasn't just the chill of the autumn breeze. There was something heavier about it, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. But he brushed it off as nerves, nothing more. As he got closer to the house, he saw it looming in the distance. The old Victorian mansion was covered in ivy, with broken windows and a sagging porch that looked like it could collapse at any moment. The paint was peeling. The wood was rotting. It looked abandoned. It looked like something out of a horror movie. Thomas didn't want to admit it, but even though he was skeptical, there was something unsettling about it. He parked his car a little ways down the road and walked up to the front gate. It was rusted and creaked as he pushed it open. The yard was overgrown, the grass waist-high in places. No one had been here for years. The front door was slightly ajar, and Thomas, despite every warning in his head, pushed it open and stepped inside. The air in the house was thick with dust. His footsteps echoed in the empty halls. The walls were covered with peeling wallpaper and the floor creaked with every step he took. But there was no sound of anything else. No voices, no footsteps, no strange noises. Just the eerie quiet. As he moved further into the house, Thomas noticed something odd. There were old photographs on the walls, some of them cracked, others faded. They were portraits of families, but there was one thing that stood out. In every single photograph, the faces had been scratched out. Some had deep gouges in them. Others just seemed erased, as if someone didn't want anyone to remember those faces. The deeper he went into the house, the stranger it felt. The temperature dropped, and a strange feeling of unease settled over him. It was almost as if the house didn't want him there. But still, Thomas pressed on. He'd come this far, and he wasn't about to turn back just because of a few creepy pictures. He found himself at the foot of a narrow staircase that led up to the second floor. The wood groaned under his feet as he slowly made his way up. The second floor was even darker, with only the faintest light filtering in through the cracked windows. As he reached the top, he noticed something strange. A door at the end of the hall that seemed to be slightly open. Thomas approached it cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. The door was old, the wood warped and cracked. It was hard to see inside, but there was something about the way it stood there, waiting, that made his skin crawl. He pushed the door open. The room inside was small, but it was the only one that seemed to be relatively untouched by time. There was an old wooden desk, a chair that had been turned over, and a strange, large mirror that seemed to dominate the room. The mirror was old, the glass cloudy and cracked in places, but the frame was beautiful. Dark wood, intricately carved, with strange symbols etched into it. Thomas couldn't help but stare at the mirror. There was something about it that drew him in. He walked closer, his reflection wavering in the cloudy glass. But then, something caught his eye. In the reflection, he saw a shadow move behind him. He spun around, but the room was empty. His heart started racing. He turned back to the mirror, and that's when he saw it. Just behind his reflection, a figure standing in the doorway. A woman, dressed in an old-fashioned black gown, her face obscured by a veil. The reflection didn't match what he saw in the room. He didn't see her standing there in real life, just in the mirror. Thomas froze. His breath caught in his throat. He turned to leave, but as he did, the door slammed shut, trapping him in the room. The temperature plummeted. The air grew heavy, suffocating. Thomas banged on the door, but it wouldn't open. His pulse raced as the shadows in the room seemed to grow darker, swirling around him. Then, he heard her voice. "Get out." It was a whisper, so soft that it barely registered, but it was enough to send a jolt of fear through him. The air around him seemed to press in, and the shadows began to take form. He could see them now, figures in the corners of the room, all dressed in old-fashioned clothing, their faces obscured, standing still as statues. They weren't moving, but their presence was undeniable. Thomas couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Get out, or you'll never leave." The voice was clearer now, closer, as if it was right behind him. He spun around, but there was no one there, only the figures in the mirror, watching him. He pounded on the door again, this time with all his strength. The door didn't budge, and that's when he realized something even worse. The reflection in the mirror was changing. The woman in the veil was stepping toward him, her face still hidden, but her presence overwhelming. She reached out, her hand emerging from the glass, the fingers long and pale, almost skeletal. "Leave," she whispered, but her voice was now filled with malice. Thomas didn't wait for another second. He turned and rammed into the door one last time. It broke open with a loud crash, and he stumbled out into the hallway. The figures in the room followed, but only in the mirror. He didn't stop to look back. He ran, tripping over his own feet as he made his way down the stairs and out the door. When he finally reached his car, he didn't hesitate. He started the engine and sped off, not daring to look back at the house. As he drove, he could still hear her voice, faintly in the back of his mind. The house, the mirror, the figures. He knew he would never forget that night. Thomas never went back to the house. And to this day, whenever we talk about it, he won't go into details. But I've seen the way he looks when he talks about the mirror. He knows something that none of us do. Something that's better left forgotten. And trust me, I don't ever want to find out what it is.